Alright, so here's part 2 of your flipped classroom adventure. Today's topic talks about Punnett square exceptions. What does that mean? Punnett square exceptions talks about exceptions to the Punnett square rules that we've been talking about so far. So the regular rules that we've been looking at are circled in red. I've taken a basic trait for body shape, round and square, and I've assigned a dominant allele and also a recessive allele. So take a look at the genotypes as well as the phenotypes that are possible for this particular trait, and you'll notice it's nothing different from what we've been talking about. But these rules are going to change very, very shortly in two particular situations entitled Punnett square exceptions. The first scenario is called incomplete dominance. It means that the dominant trait is not completely dominant. So what does that mean? If you have a heterozygous genotype, the phenotype is going to be a trait that is in between the dominant and the recessive. So I always like to tell my students, incomplete is in between. Incomplete is in between. The best way to show you is through an example. The snapdragon plat is the best real-life example of incomplete dominance. So the dominant allele is R. The recessive allele is W. To show you that it is an exception, we're now going to mix letters. We never mixed letters before. So as soon as you see mixed letters, in this case R and W, you know that we're talking about a Punnett square exception. So the dominant is RR, that will be a red flower for the snapdragon plant. Recessive is WW, a white flower. The heterozygous, two different alleles, R and W, produces a pink flower. That is the in-between trait. Red is dominant, white is recessive. The in-between red and white is going to be pink. So again, incomplete is in between. Visual to show you what we mean. Okay? Again, R is red, that's dominant. W is white, that's recessive. So if I were to cross a red flower with a white flower, I would get all pink offspring. Again, incomplete is in between. The second Punnett exception is called codominance. Normally, you would just have one dominant trait, but in this Punnett square exception, you have two dominant traits, and there's a possibility that they both show up in the genotype. So I like to give the analogy of the swirl ice cream cone. Swirl ice cream is always going to be half vanilla and half chocolate. So I want you to imagine that both vanilla and chocolate are both dominant traits, and when they show up in the swirl ice cream, they both show up equally. It's half vanilla and half chocolate. The best real-life example for codominance would be human blood type. A is a dominant allele, B is a dominant allele as well, and you can have blood type AB. A is dominant, B is dominant, and they both show up equally side by side. So that is all codominance. The next Punnett square exception is called multiple alleles. Usually, you just have two alleles for a trait, dominant and recessive. One dominant and one recessive. In multiple alleles, a gene has 3 or more alleles found in the population. Again, human blood type is the best example because A is a dominant allele, B is a dominant allele, and O is a recessive allele. So you have 3 alleles here rather than just 2. So again, it's all about Punnett square exceptions. For multiple alleles, the scenario that we're obviously going to be working with is human blood type. So you will need to memorize the phenotypes and the genotypes for the 4 possible blood types. There's 4 possible blood types. There are type A, type B, type AB, and type O. Anytime you're talking about the word phenotype, you have to include the word type. That's why I wrote it in for you in the chart. For geno, it's 2 letters. Again, you get one allele from mom, the other allele from dad. Remember, A and B are both dominant. O is recessive. So for type A blood, there's 2 possible genotypes, the homo version and the hetero version. The homo version is big A. Hetero version is AO. For type B, 2 possible genotypes as well, homo version and hetero version. Homo version is BB, hetero version is BO. For type AB, there's only one genotype, AB. And for type O, there's only one genotype, OO. Again, difference between pheno and geno. For pheno, make sure you include the word type. For geno, it's just 2 letters, the 2 alleles. And the last exception, polygenic traits. Usually, one gene controls one trait, but sometimes you have a trait that could be controlled by 2 or more genes. And this is what they mean by polygenic trait. Poly means more than one. Genic obviously means inheritance, and then trait. So polygenic traits will often show a wide range of phenotypes. It's not just dominant phenotype or recessive phenotype. There's a whole lot of in-betweens. So the 2 real-life examples of polygenic traits would be eye color and skin color. And that is all the Punnett square exceptions that we will be talking about.